Hello YouTube, Mark here, also known as the Geo Scholar, coming to you live with part 2 of Are We Running Out of Water? Question mark. I brought this glass of water for the occasion. Now in the last video I sort of did a start. I talked about how we have water on our planet. It's a precious resource. Even though the majority of the planet is water, we only a small part of it is drinkable. And we have 7 billion people on the planet. We have 7 billion people on this planet. And with the 7 billion people living on this planet, we have to consider our water resources, and we also have to consider the geography, because it's not just about are we running out of water, it's where is the water. Because you get a lot of places that they don't get enough water, and then you get a lot of places that get way too much water for their own good. Because, through rainfall, many places are low-lying and they flood easily. And then you got a lot of places where you have to consider some of the geographic factors. And you have to consider, in the last video I talked about desalination, where you would take the salt out of the ocean water, process it, take the salt out of it, make it drinkable. And this is being done in many places. It's being done in Kuwait, it's being done in Israel, it's being done... The highest proportion of it in the world is being done around this part of the world. Right there, right around the Gulf region, where you have Saudi... No, sorry, I got the wrong place. It's right here. I got it wrong. The Gulf region, where you've got Dubai, Kuwait, and you've got Iran over here, you got Saudi Arabia over here. That's where you have a large amount of desalination plants. And with the desalination plants, that's how a lot of people get their water. Kuwait gets nearly 100% of their water resources from desalination plants, because it's a desert region. You have a lot of people in a desert region, and they need water. And so how do you get water to people? You have to take the seawater, process it, and turn it into ocean water. And that's one way people respond to an environment that is quite dry, quite hostile to having large numbers of people live there. Excuse me for a moment. You have large numbers of people living in a place where it's generally not friendly living, because you don't have much water to speak of other than the sea. And you have to think about some of the ways people are trying to deal with water resource issues. Take, for instance, Peru. Now, you've got places in Peru where there's plenty of water, but then you've got places like Lima, Peru, you've got places on Peru's west coast. Ironically, Peru's desert is on the coast. Peru's driest places are on the Pacific coast. So that's really ironic. And so, but you're thinking you got to get your water from somewhere. You either have to get it from a river, or you either have to get it from snowmelt. You got to get it from somewhere. One thing that was being done for poor people living in I think, it was Lima, I think. One thing being done for the poor people there they would make these little fog catchers because it is really ironic. Lima, Peru is one of the foggiest cities in the world, and yet it's one of the driest in terms of annual rainfall. They get less than 5 inches of rain a year. I mean, it's desert. I mean, Lima, Peru is the largest desert city by population in the world. And I'm gonna leave a link in the description box about Peru. I have a video about Peru. I'm gonna leave a link in the description box. Go check it out. But very dry region, and yet because of the Humboldt current, because of the cold ocean currents, and because of the sort of, you've got fog coming up. You've got sort of, in California they call that the June gloom. In Argentina you've got the fog, no, not Argentina, Peru. In Peru you've got the fog coming off the ocean, and what people would do is they would take these screens, and the fog would hit the screens, and sort of, you got condensation, and you got that condensing, and then you can collect water that way. And that's one way of dealing with limited water resources, especially particularly for poor people. One way to get them, it's a project, it's ongoing, it's just getting started, and so it makes you wonder how much more can be done, and for how many more places it can be done, and it makes you wonder other things that can be done. Now back to the desalinization. I think about Cape Town, South Africa. One of the big problems that's going on there is, you have mismanagement. You probably have mismanagement of water resources, issues probably with the government, because the governments can play a big factor with water resources as well. If you have a government that's not properly managing your water resources, there's a problem. You see the mismanagement in many places. And I wanted to touch something about desalinization. Desalination of water is very energy intensive. That's a big drawback. I was watching No Reservations. Anthony Bourdain, he's the host of that show when it was going on. He made a trip to Dubai. He mentioned that it would cost more to make water than to make gasoline. Think about that. It costs more to make water than to make gasoline. This goes to show just the lack of water resources in Dubai, and so they have to desalinize water. And then you have to really think about how much energy, how much fuel it takes to run a desalination plant, and to get the salt out of that water to make it drinkable. And then you have to think about how many desalination plants are around that area, around the Arabian, Persian Gulf region. Just how much. And for that very reason, we have to really think about our water resources. We're thinking, are we wanting, instead of thinking, are we running out of water, we have to think, what is sustainable? What is it about our geography? How do we use our geography to create a sustainability for our water resources? I mean, let's be honest. There are a lot of people who want to move out to the greater Los Angeles area, who are going to want to move out to San Diego. I've been out to Los Angeles. I went out there and it felt nice to be out there. Climate, pretty nice out there, in the Mediterranean climate. You can see why a lot of people want to move to California. But it's understandable that water doesn't come cheap. And people, you cannot stop people from moving where they want to move. People are going to move to places where it's not where it would seem like it's not sustainable to have millions of people there. In fact, Los Angeles, for a long time, San Francisco was the largest city in California until like the 20th century when Hollywood started going towards Los Angeles. Because obviously, when you want to film westerns, you want to be in a place that has that great western feel. And with the Mediterranean climate and with the canyons and mountains and deserts in Southern California, it looks the part. It's very difficult to film a western when you're in New York or out in Long Island. So it's understandable a lot of people want to move to California. And then you have to think about how much water, because California is a cornucopia when it comes to agriculture. How much water is being used for the crops and how much is needed. You have to think about sustainable solutions to managing our water resources. And in some cases, it's going to just start with just how many times you shower. And yes, we all need to shower, but we all need to think about sustainable ways of going about it too. You take your shower, you get yourself cleaned up, you do what you gotta do, and then you do, but be careful about it. You have to consider how much water you use every day. You know, really think about that. And then you gotta think about, we need to really think about all the conflicts that have been taking place over water. Middle East. One big problem over there, we think about, I mentioned in another live stream about water and geopolitics. And one big thing I mentioned, a lot of people think about oil when they think about the geopolitics of the Middle East, but they should also be thinking about water, because when you think about it, water is precious. Water is a very precious resource, and it's particularly a fight over aquifers. Now you would think, why fight over the aquifers? I'm going to explain something. It's cheaper to get your water from aquifers when you have it. It's cheaper to get your water from rivers, from lakes, and from aquifers than it happened again. As I was saying, it's cheaper to get your water from aquifers, from lakes, and from rivers than it is to desalinize the water. And then you have to think about Israel. Israel does do desalination, it does turn its seawater into drinking water through desalination. You have desalination going on in Israel right now. In fact, they are a big leader in it. That said, it's not cheap. And unlike many parts of the Middle East, Israel doesn't have much oil to speak of. It's not an oil-producing nation. In fact, they've had to be creative in coming up with sustainable ways of creating energy in Israel because of the lack of oil. If you're a country that doesn't have much oil, fuel prices probably are not going to be cheap. And so you have to really think about how our water is being used, and what it takes in some places. You have to create drinkable water. And so it makes you wonder about, is it a question of, are we running out of water? Or is it a matter of, you have a lot of people living, or is it, are we competing for water? What role does geography play? How are we treating our water? Many places the water is polluted, and you don't want to drink polluted water. It'll make you sick and kill you. It's just straight up. Many places the water is not drinkable because it's polluted. You've got many places where people collect rainwater for their own personal use, or you got many places that you got some places that depend on collecting rainwater as a water source for communities. So you have to really think about that too. You have to think about the geography, your environment, how you're going to deal with your water resources. And that's it. So we think about how people are thinking about, are we running, are we going to run out of water? And yeah, there are some places that are at risk for running out of water. And so when you think about running out of water, it's all about how do we manage these water resources? What do we do? And that is it. If you like this video, if you like this live stream, check out other videos on my channel. And as always, be sure to leave a comment, like, and subscribe.